Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk. African President of the United States of America, President Barack Obama.
Good to see you. I just want to say everybody back home, right back at you. We appreciate you. You always give us straight talk.
Got a hold of my hand, but I saved his life. Today, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I should say, and children, we have one of the Supreme Court justices right here in the state of Illinois on the show with us. Now, I'd like you to know this is my first cousin by, not marriage, but by friendship. My first cousin by friendship. Keep that in mind. So when I tell you that this is a gentleman that I've admired from the very first time that I met him some years ago at Operation Push, wasn't it?
I think it may have been.
At Operation Push.
Right.
I saw how he was interacting with people, and I saw when he ran for judge, I voted for him. I helped him out, got petitions for him. Then he was promoted to the appellate court, and then to the Supreme Court. I'm talking about my friend Justice P. Neville Scott.
P.
Good
Scott
to have you.
Neville.
P. Scott
How
Neville.
are you this afternoon?
P. Scott Neville, right. I'm great. I'm great. Just, I feel much better knowing that you're here with me and that you're going to go back and protect our communities.
Well, that's one of the reasons for being on the Supreme Court. We just finished our September term last week. It's a very interesting week. What people don't understand is how much administrative business the court handles the first day of the term.
Right.
The term is usually 2 weeks. So on the first day, we go over the opinions that people have written. We spend a little time on various agenda items. One item that I wanted the court to consider, it's called the Chief's Agenda. I had made a proposal that the court consider, one, giving lawyers continuing legal education credit for assisting people who cannot afford to hire a lawyer. We refer to them as self-represented litigants. And the court decided to continue to study that matter. The other matter that I proposed to the court is another issue of grave concern, and that's because since 60 to 70% of all people who appear in our courts today in civil courts are unrepresented, once again, self-represented litigants. If they lose, however, they don't have a record because just as they cannot afford a lawyer, they cannot afford a court reporter.
Right.
So my proposal was to have recording devices put in courtrooms, and the court was very interested in that proposal to place recording devices in courtrooms. So we are also studying that issue. But if we can put recording devices in courtrooms, if you are a civil litigant, if you can't afford to pay for a court reporter, you'll have a way of getting a transcript. So if you elect to appeal your case can be heard.
And that's a wonderful idea. That's a great idea.
Well,
But
the thing is, I'm trying to demystify the courts. I want the courts to work for everybody. The courts work for people who have resources. I want the courts to work for people who don't have resources.
in other words, if a person has the resources, he can't utilize that system.
Well, I'm not going to say can't. We'd prefer if he did not. But we simply want to make the courts helpful to everybody. I guess maybe what they will do is charge a premium. And you see, there's another thing that we need to consider. The state has a group of people who perform a valuable service. They're referred to as court reporters. The problem is everybody cannot afford to pay a court reporter. So I want the recording devices to be a backup system for people who can't afford to pay court reporters. But if the court determines that a person can afford to pay, that person doesn't bring in a court reporter, then you'll just charge him court reporter rates, you see, because he is trying to take advantage of the system. He's trying to take advantage of the court's attempt to level the playing field so everybody has the same opportunity to appeal. And since I grew up on 43rd Street, I say I've come all the way from 43rd Street to LaSalle Street. And since I am poor, was poor, identify with poor people, since I am very sensitive to the problems of people, poor people, people in my community, because I came from Bronzeville. One of our great historians, Temuel Black, refers to Bronzeville as that area between 26th Street on the north, 63rd Street on the south, Cottage Grove on the east, and State Street on the west. He refers to that area as sacred ground. And it's sacred ground because many of the people who migrated from the south to the north, when they arrived in Chicago, the next to the last stop on the city of New Orleans was 63rd Street. So it was very easy to get off at 63rd Street and go into the area that was segregated, and that was the only area blacks were permitted to live in. Or you could go to the end of the line. They called it Roosevelt Road. My grandmother referred to it as 12th Street.
Right.
Go to 12th Street. And then if you didn't have a means of transportation, you could walk the 14 blocks up to 26th Street where you could meet your relatives. But that area was sacred ground then, it's sacred ground today. And you know, people often ask me about my judicial philosophy. Martin Luther King said, "The moral arc of the universe bends towards justice." My moral arc has always been bent towards justice because I have seen during the course of my lifetime injustice. And that's the whole purpose for my being on the bench, to balance the scales of justice, to provide a means for the poor and the oppressed to have a voice. You know, I said that my motto has been, I believe in equal justice for all. That means no person will be unseen and no person will be unheard. My whole goal in sitting on the Supreme Court is to make sure that people don't just get the justice they can afford, but the justice they deserve.
Wow. See, therein lies the reason why we cannot afford to let this man lead that court, that Supreme Court. Because just the idea of what you're proposing that will help the whole state of Illinois, really. In some ways, the whole state of Illinois will benefit from that. And you know, it's similar to what you're saying. Is similar to what we have done over the years to one another. We need a raise in taxes, and a raise in salaries.
Well,
if we get a raise in salary, all the taxes are going up. Not taxes. Everything else is going to go up, and it's not going up in your favor.
Well, let me just say this. I just don't make comments on things that are not presented to the court. I think that you may be absolutely correct, but that problem hasn't been presented to the court yet.
I understand.
But you're right. You know, prices are rising. Tariffs are being placed on goods by Washington. And it's very difficult for people to live in this environment.
And they think a dollar raise is going to help them. That's my point. They think a dollar raise or $2 raise is going to help them. But like the city of Chicago, and I know you don't have to respond to this, but the city of Chicago has a ruling by Manuel, I guess, that minimum wage would be $12, going up to $15, I think, next year, 20 or 21. But I think Laurie said she's going to do it for 2020, going up to 15. Now, you know, I sit back and I remember going to the station with my dad when I was a little boy, and he was paying $4 a gallon, $4 a gallon, 4 cents a gallon. I'm sorry, 4 cents a gallon for gas. And the tank car wouldn't hold but 10 gallons, so you pay 40 cents for a full tank of gas. Now he made 55 cents an hour, so that's 15 cents less than he makes per hour. Now, challenge anyone to go any place now and get a full tank of gas for their salary. That $15 salary, that $12 salary, even $20 or $25 salary, you're not going to get a full tank for that. So, you know, everything goes up higher than what your salary was.
There's no question that we've got to figure out how to provide people with a livable wage.
Right, and stabilize it.
Right. When I consider a lot of my criminal cases, I often wonder if things might have been different if the family was a little more stable, if the parents had been employed, if the kids were attending school. But if you have instability, if you don't have resources in the home, if children feel that they've got to go out and support the family, and lacking skills, oftentimes the only way to support the family is to do something illegal. We've got to change that paradigm because it's presenting a number of problems for our society. We've got to make it possible for everybody, for every citizen in this country, in this world, to be all that he can be. And you can't be all that you can be if your family's unstable. You can't be all that you can be if you're not properly educated. All of those things make a difference, and they determine your success or failure.
Good.
So we've got to continue working to kind of equalize things, and that's what I've been attempting to do with the court system. Make the court system work for every citizen.
Right.
Not just rich citizens, but those citizens who lack resources. Not just white citizens, but black citizens and Latino citizens. For all citizens, we've got to make the court system work. And along those same lines, I'm also of the opinion that the court system and the judiciary, the people who make the decisions, should look like the people they're making those decisions for. Another way of putting that is the judiciary should mirror society.
Right.
So when people come into the courtroom or go into a courthouse, they see people that look like themselves. And then they can have confidence in what is taking place because they know somebody that looks like them or talks like them or is from the same place that they're from, that they're making decisions, so they feel they're invested in our system of justice. And that's what I'm attempting to do. I want the judiciary, or I'd very much like to see it be very diverse, not only in terms of race and gender, but in terms of sexual orientation.
Right.
You see, in terms of ethnicity. We all have to play a part. And I'm becoming particularly concerned when you consider the Supreme Court position, because there are 24 states in the United States that today don't have a person of color sitting on their Supreme Court.
Right.
I'm concerned because in the United States, there are 13 states that have never had a person of color. Well, I'm concerned because 40% of all the people in the United States are people of color. I'm concerned because in the city of Chicago, the city is 60% at least black and Hispanic.
No, black.
Well, pardon?
Black.
Okay, well.
Black and Hispanic would be 80%.
Well, you may be correct.
Right.
I'm just talking about the numbers I've seen. So when you have those kinds of demographics, the judiciary should look like the demographics are reflected, because people who are coming into those courts are primarily people of color, and they should feel comfortable in that environment. They should feel comfortable with the decisions that are being made. And I think that the Supreme Court is conscious of that. I can report two things that have occurred. within the last 30 to 45 days. When I went on to the Supreme Court in June of 2018, there are 5 Supreme Court districts. 2 of the Supreme Court districts did not have an African American on the appellate court. In the last 30 to 45 days, the 5th district and the 2nd district, which is north of us, have both added a person of color to their appellate courts. So things may not be changing as fast as we'd like for them to change, but change is taking place.
Change is taking place,
And
yes.
it's impossible to stop change. You know, things are evolving, and they're evolving very quickly, but you can't stop change. Change is going to occur, and it's taking place, and I'm very happy to see that.
Well, you see, we need judges like yourself on the bench. We have some. I'm not saying we don't have any. We need judges like yourself, and I know quite a few of them who are like yourself. And, you know, they see a thing as it is, not as someone else want it to be.
Well, I
And
think
this is how a lot of judges and a lot of politicians function.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. And, you know, one thing that I am attempting to do is I am recognizing that the court must have a succession plan. The Supreme Court now recognizes that lawyers are aging out, and they now have a plan or a proposed plan that senior lawyers are supposed to follow. Well, I think that the Supreme Court needs a plan. At least I'm planning for the day I'll no longer be on the court. So I am trying to identify judges. Since I've been on the bench for a year, I've appointed 9 people. I'm looking for people who can fill vacancies on the appellate court and the Supreme Court, people who are going to be fair.
And Judge Freeman saw it in you.
I would like to think that he did.
Yes, he saw it in you. That's why he placed you in this spot.
Well, I'd like to think that. Now, there are 5 people on the appellate court who are running against me, and even though the Supreme Court was in a position, you see, to select them, they selected me. So I would hope that you're correct, that Justice Freeman thought that I could carry on his great legacy. He was a tremendous jurist.
Which you are.
And I am trying very hard to do that. He fought the good fight for 28 years. He was a man among men. That was quite a fight to be the only African American person on the Illinois Supreme Court. And I would like to hasten to add that the public should be aware of the fact that the Supreme Court has been in existence for 200 years, 201 years. The court celebrated its bicentennial year last year. But during that 200-year period, there have only been 2 African Americans on that court, Justice Freeman being the first and I being the second. So it took roughly 170 years for change to take place, for the court to recognize that it would be a good idea to have a person of color, and we're trying to continue that tradition. I have replaced Justice Freeman. I am, of course, looking to the future. I recognize that I need to have some kind of plan, because one day I too will have to step down from the Supreme Court. The court has recognized the need for women. You know, several years ago, Justice Mary Ann McMorrow became the first woman to sit on the Illinois Supreme Court, and she was succeeded by Ann Burke.
Ann Burke, right.
And then Justice Fitzgerald retired, and he was succeeded by Mary Jane Tice. So the court recognizes this. In the 4th district, Justice Ben, what's his name? I can't recall his name, but he retired from the 4th district, and Justice Garmon was appointed to replace him. So the court recognizes that it must change. It can't be a male bastion, that women have a right to participate. I've seen some demographic studies that say women are in the majority. I know they're in the majority in many law schools. So they are occupying their rightful place on the Supreme Court.
You're not speaking of Joyce Jarman, are you?
No, his name is Ben. What's Justice?
We have a Joyce Gorman in the.
No, not no. I'm not talking about Joyce Gorman.
Right.
I know her. She's from Beverly. I know,
Right.
but she recently retired.
Did she retire?
She retired. She's
Wow.
retired.
I wonder why people retire from work. Retire, and this is not work.
Because her husband retired. I think she
Yeah,
decided
well.
she was going to retire.
He was a good guy too.
He was.
Oh, he was a good guy, I should say.
Very nice man.
Yeah.
Right.
Guess I met him through Bob Shaw
Okay. Right.
when he was on the what do they call it?
Board of Review?
Yeah, Board of Review, but he had a title,
Commissioner
of a title. I think he was the chairman of the board.
Okay.
He was in charge of, and Gorman worked for him.
Okay.
Her husband worked for him,
Okay.
and I went to their wedding when they got married. Because I put on a show every week.
Right. I
She
recall
became
that.
judge.
As a matter of fact, you put her on the show in 2000 because she ran with me
Right.
in
Right.
2000. I remember that very well.
That's right. The two of you on the show, right?
Right. You had her on often. I do remember that.
Yeah. Bob Shaw said, "This is my candidate. Put on the show every week."
Okay.
And she walked right through.
Right. She did. She did very, very well. I remember Judge Gorman very well.
She's a nice person. Very nice people. A husband and wife. They're very nice. But back to you. Now, you were saying, you said a number of things that really touched my soul. So far as looking out into the ether, I should say. You don't find that. I find right now we have candidates running that could spoil the fact that either one of you can win,
That's true.
with too many running against one.
That's true. I'd like to address that issue. Often a community that does not know its history is bound to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Right.
And I was studying my history, and I had an opportunity to listen to the speech that Martin Luther King gave the night before he died. And during that speech, he talked about the Good Samaritan. And if I may, he mentioned how there were people who were on the road to Jericho. And he said the first man walked up and saw a man lying on the side of the road. And he asked the question to himself, if I help that man who's on the road struggling, what will happen to me? He said the next person to come down the road leading to Jericho was a priest. And the priest asked the same question. He said, if I help that man who's stranded on the side of the road, what will happen to me? But King reported that the Good Samaritan was the only person to ask the right question. When he reached the man, he did not ask, if I help him, what will happen to me? He reversed the question and said, if I don't help him, what will happen to him? Well, that's the question that we need to be asking, those of us who are running against each other. Not if we lose the election, what will happen to us? If somebody doesn't win the election, what's going to happen to the people in the community? That's the question I'm asking.
But don't you think these people are smart enough to know that? And we're wondering why?
Well,
are you doing it?
Maybe they need to listen to Dr. King's speech.
Right.
It's not if I don't win, what happens to me? The real question is, if we don't win, what happens to our community?
Right.
And the community is in a state of peril. The community is counting on people in positions of power to assist them out of their plight. So I ask that question again. The question is not what will happen to me, but what will happen to the community
Right.
if we don't win. That is the question.
So, yeah, how can we get across to people that we all should work together instead of against one another the way we're doing,
Well,
we've done over the years?
that is the $64,000 question. We've been fighting that battle, and nobody seems to know the answer to the question. If I knew that question, then maybe I could solve the problem. Unfortunately, I don't. But I recognize the importance of the community not making a mistake, of the community not losing the seat. That's why my motto is, let's keep the seat. Which means let us keep the seat. Because if we lose the seat, the community is going to be harmed.
Look at what happened when Harold died.
We lost the seat for 31 years or 32 years. No question about it. We are going to repeat one of the mistakes in our past.
And we saw what happened in losing that seat. Harold Washington had the city moving in one direction that would benefit the city of Chicago, not one group of any people. Just the city of Chicago benefited from him being the mayor. And I talked to people from the north side, from the east side, all around Chicago. They all loved Harold. And there's no way he would have lost an election. And here he dies, naturally. And we got two people wanting to run against each other. So they decided, okay, I'll run against you. You know, it was a big mix-up, big mix-up.
There's no question about it.
I'll step out and let you run. If you win, good. If you lose, then I'll run against him. Deal.
Well, the only reason I persist in running is because I am sitting in the seat. If
You're
I were
sitting in the
not,
seat. You have
if
no...
I were not sitting in the seat, I would gladly step out of the race. But I am in the seat, and I'd like to remind the listening audience, I have been endorsed by the Democratic Party as the Democratic Party's candidate. I am the endorsed candidate of the party. So,
and the endorsed candidate by the people.
and hopefully I'll be the endorsed candidate of the people. But I was recommended by Justice Freeman. It took 4 votes from the justices on the Supreme Court, and I got the 4 votes, even though 4 of my opponents were sitting on the court with me. The court selected me. I've been endorsed by the Democratic Party, so I feel that if someone has to withdraw from the race, it should not be me. Having been selected by the court, having been endorsed by the party, and now sitting in the seat, that it should be someone else who should make that decision.
But we, as a citizen, can look back and see what you've done during that period.
I've been on the battlefield for my entire 45-year career. I fought with Justice Pincham, my mentor. We filed a lawsuit challenging the redistricting that had been done by the city in 1990. We added additional ward. There were a number of African Americans and Latinos who had been wrongfully terminated by the city of Chicago. We got on the battlefield and we fought for the Latinos and the African Americans. When a group of legislators decided that we did not have a diverse bench, they proposed and passed some legislation that divided the Circuit Court of Cook County into sub-circuits. I was an advisor to that group. I was a co-founder of the Alliance of Bar Associations. And the Alliance of Bar Associations is an organization that vets judges. You see, before judges can assume their judgeships, they have to be evaluated or vetted by bar associations to determine their qualifications to sit in those offices. Well, before the Alliance came into existence, the only organization doing the evaluations or vetting was the all-white Chicago bar. I didn't think that was fair. So the Alliance came into existence. It's a diverse group. It's composed of Asians, Latinos, Greeks, Jewish lawyers, blacks, black women, white women. It is gays and lesbians. Very aggressive, the Chicago Council of Lawyers. It is a diverse group of bar associations. I refer to it as the United Nations of Bar Associations. But the common thread that runs through my legal career is trying to help those who cannot help themselves. Trying to get a diverse bench, first with legislation, and then to make sure that the process that is being used to evaluate them or vet them for judgeships, making sure that is fair. Once I got to the court, I continued the fight, speaking out when I thought decisions were not being made fairly and dissenting. You see, the one thing that distinguishes me from my colleagues is I have a record of dissenting. I am willing to dissent. I am willing to fight the fight. One issue that has always been a big problem for African Americans is, particularly in criminal cases, having to present or try a criminal case before an all-white jury. I know that's not fair. You know it's not fair.
Right.
I have several Batson decisions. Batson was the Illinois Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court case, which held that you cannot remove blacks from a jury with your peremptory challenges if you don't have cause. A peremptory challenge is a challenge that a lawyer is given to excuse a person for serving. Well, you can excuse the person, but it cannot be for a racial reason. It cannot be because of their sex. It cannot be because of their sexual orientation. Well, I have written a number of decisions and even a dissent that addresses that very issue, since I recognize that's an issue that has troubled African Americans in this judicial system. So when you look at my record, you see those kinds of cases in my decision making. I am on the battlefield to do what is right, to follow the law, to make sure that the game is played by one set of rules. I've been fighting this fight for 45 years, and hopefully the electorate will make a decision and return me and elect me to the Supreme Court. I want to thank the electorate. They elected me in 2000 with your help. I appeared on this show.
Right.
They elected me in 2012. With your help, I appeared on this show. You have permitted me to come on the show in 2019. Hopefully the electorate will study my record, study the records of my opponents, and will decide. You know, you have to vote for what's in your best interest. If
your friends are not watching the program, spread the word. Spread the word. We're going to take a break, please, Scott. Take a break and let him play a few commercials. He just came out and gave me the signal. We'll be right back after these messages. World. Come to Golden's Tropical World for tropical fish of all sizes, colors, and types. and other small animals like iguanas and birds from all over the world. There are beautiful tanks, pet supply needs, including dog and cat foods, and expert consultation. Check out Golden's Tropical World, 8611 South Ashland Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Call ahead, 773-239-8809. Your Pet Shop.
What's it like working with your family? Good question.
Right, great question. Original Soul Vegetarian was established over 38 years ago from our parents, so we're second generation owners.
Back then in the 80s, nobody knew what vegan looked like.
But if you say, oh, this is barbecue, they'll eat it and say, oh, it's good.
Original Soul Vegetarian has been an anchor in this community. At least 90% of our clientele aren't vegans.
It has helped the community a lot with being aware of healthy eating and healthier options.
Most of everything that we sell is sourced locally, and it's all made in-house because it's just not about food for us. Your health is your wealth. Just add something healthy to what you're eating. You're gonna feel better.
Hart, what's going on?
I'm leaving.
Why? What did I do?
Not enough. You constantly ignore me. You barely eat anything healthy. You're half as active as you used to be. The pressure is just too much. I quit.
Okay, I get it. I'll do better. Just please,
Don't leave. Okay. But remember, if I go, you go.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Why? Why? Why are you following me? Why my hoodie make me look suspicious?
Why does my music make me dangerous?
Why are people that are supposed to protect me attacking me?
Why are you afraid of me? Why do you think I'm dangerous? Why do I afraid of people who are supposed to protect me?
Why can't I make a peace sign without you labeling the gang sign?
Why does standing your ground only work when I'm on the ground?
Why do you show this photo over this one?
Why do you only stop and frisk me?
Why do you have low expectations for me?
Why can't I run down the street without causing alarms?
Why do you think I'm a thug?
Why do you assume I'm armed? Why can I breathe? Why is my mom scared every time I leave the house?
Why are you targeting me?
Why am I a target? Why? 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 I know why. And it has to stop. It must stop.
Because I have dreams. Because I can change the world.
Because I will make a difference. Because I have a family. Because I am strong.
Because I'm talented.
I have a voice.
I can find a cure.
I have goals.
I can lead the country. I am determined.
I have a future.
Because I'm a scholar.
I am powerful.
I'm someone's friend.
I'm someone's brother.
I'm someone's son. Someone loves me. And because my life matters too. My life matters.
My life matters.
My life matters. My life matters. My life matters.
Our lives matter.
And so did theirs.
Okay, we're back. We're talking with Justice P. Scott Neville of the Illinois Supreme Court, He's running for office. When did the election?
The election is March 17th, 2020.
2020, March 17th. That's a year. That's over a year from now.
Well,
Not quite
a year.
Yeah,
about
no.
six months.
6 to 8 months, right?
But the electorate needs to really educate itself, and they need to really take a serious look at the people who are running for the Supreme Court. It's probably the most important jobs in the state of Illinois. There are only 7 Supreme Court justices. The decisions made by the Illinois Supreme Court are the supreme law of the state of Illinois, not the supreme law of the land, but the supreme law of the state of Illinois. So we have got to educate ourselves. We have got to be informed. You cannot count on people to inform you. You've got to go out and educate yourself. And the information is out there. Study people's records. Another thing that people should pay very close attention to is the one office where Trump has filled more positions is the judiciary.
Judiciary, right.
He is filling,
he
has surpassed, I believe, the number of judges that Obama appointed in 8 years in less than 4 years, because he recognizes how important the judicial office is. Ladies and gentlemen, you should understand how important the judicial office is. You are more likely to appear before a judge, and you will never appear before a city councilman or the mayor, before a state legislator or the governor, before a congressional person, be that the United States Congress or the United States Senate or the president. You may very well appear before a judge. But the good thing about it is, in the state of Illinois, ladies and gentlemen, you have the opportunity to act as the gatekeeper. You decide which judges sit not only on the circuit court, not only on the appellate court, but also on the Supreme Court. You get to decide, but you have to get up and go vote. You do not get to make the decision if you sit at home. If you sit at home, don't complain if you don't like the judge's decision. Ask yourself the question, why didn't I get up and go and vote? You get to make the decision. Illinois is a rare state. A lot of states have the governor making appointments, or they have the political leaders from the 2 parties making the appointments to the circuit court, the appellate court, and the Supreme Court. In the state of Illinois, voters get to make the decision. Why do you abdicate your responsibility? Why are you going to let other citizens make a decision for you? Get up and vote. You know, one of our great political leaders, John Stroger, used to say, a voteless people is a hopeless people. Are you going to be hopeless on election day, or are you going to go and vote? You know, I can't emphasize it enough.
And vote properly. Vote right. Vote positive.
But you got to vote. You know, whatever, you know, there are a couple of things citizens have a responsibility to do. You have an obligation to vote, and you have an obligation to sit on juries. You know, we often complain about the decisions judges make. Go and sit on a jury. It is your civic responsibility. But go and vote. Educate yourself and vote. I just can't emphasize it enough. Vote. You get to make the decision.
One thing I would say is our people don't realize their power.
That's true.
They have anointed these servants leaders.
Well, they've abdicated their power.
Right.
See, if you don't go vote, somebody else is going to vote.
Not just vote, as the Constitution says, in the preamble, okay, if the person that you employed to run a district, like an alderman or even the mayor, if they're not doing the job you expected them to do, you have a right to tell them to leave the office.
That's right. Well, you see, W.L. Lillard makes a very important point. Ladies and gentlemen, I work for you.
Right.
You pay my salary. You pay for the office. You pay for the people that work for me. I work for you. So you have a right to vote for me and employ me. You also have the right to vote for someone else and turn me out of office. You get to make the decision.
You hire and fire.
They hire and fire. You're my employer. I work for you. I answer to you. That's why I'm appearing on television, to kind of report the kind of job I've been doing. I'm giving you a report on my stewardship. I am a public servant. I'm employed to serve the public. I'm employed to serve you. And for the last 20 years, that's what I've been attempting to do. You put me on the circuit court, the appellate court. Justice Freeman, along with the other justices of the Supreme Court, put me on the Supreme Court. Now I'm here asking you to vote for me.
To leave you there.
Pardon?
To leave you there.
To leave me there.
For the next, what is it, 6 years, 6-year term?
10.
10-year term. Wow, okay.
A 10-year term.
It's 6 years in the appellate court, isn't it?
6 years on the circuit, 10 on the appellate, 10 on the Supreme.
Wow, where have I been?
Right, 10 years.
Wow. But most importantly, what he just said was so important that you have a right to go out and work for an individual you see that's going to protect you, going to work for you, not lord over you, but work for you. Like you said, he's a servant of the people. That's what the Constitution said. People are the servants of the city, state, or county. You are the governed. The political system are ran by, or they say the governments are ran by the governed. The governments are ran by the governed. We are the governed. We are not elected officials. We're the governed. So,
but you certainly can dictate policy.
Right,
by
absolutely.
Selecting the right person. And you see, you select the person whose views are most like your views.
And go and explain that to people who did not hear this program. Explain it to them and get them to vote for the right person.
I agree 100%. I concur. That's what I tell my colleagues. I concur.
Right.
But you've got to decide who is the right person. Mr. Lillard brought up someone who was probably, in my opinion, the greatest mayor to ever serve the city of Chicago, Harold Washington. Well, I always like to tell people that I have a lot in common with Harold Washington. Harold Washington went to Forestville Grammar School. Harold Washington went to DuSable High School. I attended those two institutions. That I was nurtured in the African American community in Bronzeville. I was educated in the African American community in Bronzeville. I was socialized in the African American community in Bronzeville. That's where I got all of my values from. That's how I interpret the Constitution, based on my experiences in Bronzeville. I already said, Martin Luther King said, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And I explained that my moral arc bends the same way because I've seen some injustice. And I am trying to keep the scales of justice balanced so that the system works for everybody, the rich and the poor, black and the white, the Asians and the Latinos. Everybody has a right to have a system that works. It must work for every citizen. But go out as a voter, study, educate yourselves, and make the decision to select the person who is going to be making decisions that are most in line with the way you think. Why would you select a person who hasn't made decisions like yours? Check our records. The record speaks for itself. But you got to check it. You know, the best evidence of what a judge is going to do is, what has he done in the past? Check his record. Which side of certain issues does he come down on? You be the judge. See, this is an opportunity when you get to be the judge. And after you make your judgment, you go to the ballot box and vote. Say, this is my judgment. This is my decision. But you got to make a decision, ladies and gentlemen. Look at all the decisions that have been made all over the country. Just last year, in the state of Georgia, a woman almost won the governor's race because people got up and went and voted. They are reporting now that African American women are going to decide the presidential election. Black men, African American women are voting. Why aren't you voting? They are going to determine what happens in this country. They're concerned about us. They're concerned about the men in their community, but they're most concerned about their children. But we have the same responsibility to get up and go vote. Every citizen has that responsibility. Go and vote.
Well, you heard it from the justice. Now you're going to hear it from me again. Convince your friends and neighbors to vote for the person that's going to be more helpful to your community, helpful to your people, more helpful to the state of Illinois. Because he's not confined to one district, he's not confined to one color or ethnicity. He's of the state of Illinois. But you know that you have a person in Springfield or in the Supreme Court that will stand up for right and wrong. You have a final word?
Yes, my final word is, if you are interested in equal justice for all, then you're interested in P. Scott Neville. I have been working my entire life to balance the scales of justice. I'm working for us all. That has been my life's work, and it will continue to be my life's work as long as I'm serving on the Illinois Supreme Court.
Right on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk, and I hope you've digested all that you heard here tonight because it's positive and it has something to do with our future. We'll see you this time again tomorrow, Monday, 6:30 p.m. Monday.